God has extravagantly shed His grace upon America. The scenic wonders of her 50 states are limitless. Massive mountain ranges like protruding vertebrae of giant dinosaurs divide the continent, twisting in and out of fertile valleys with their spectacular waterfalls and gushing mountain streams. Towering Rockies of the West snuggle tightly in blankets of snow, only to burst into exquisite beauty at the climax of winter's chill. But what could equal the ever-changing hues of the shifting sands and flowering cacti of the southwestern deserts, with their ghostly, silhouetted rock formations standing guard over the desert floor, or the splendor of Mount Hood's magnificent sunsets? Unless, of course, it would be the grandeur of Arizona's Grand Canyon. Its vastness is breathtaking. In fact, it has been called the most spectacular sight on Earth. Is it any wonder that this great land has captured the imagination of people around the world? Truly, they say, it is a land flowing with milk and honey. But surprising as it may be, it wasn't the beauty of the New World that beckoned the Pilgrim Fathers to her shores, nor was it an obsession for wealth or fame. They were a profoundly committed people, with a consuming desire to know God's will and then have the freedom to do it. This was the freedom that for centuries had been ruthlessly denied many people of the Old World, the oppression that kindled the fires of the Reformation. Of course, the Pilgrims were acutely aware of what had gone before: the Spanish Inquisition, the massacre of the Huguenots, the slaughter of the Waldenses, the burnings at the stake, the hangings, the whippings, and the imprisonments. All this was history not yet even grown cold. In virtually all the countries of Europe, whether under Catholic or Protestant rulers, freedom of religious belief and practice was unknown except to those who belonged to the established church. England's King James I, who authorized the 1611 English translation of the Bible, the book that proclaims liberty and justice for all, declared that the Puritans would have to conform to the teachings of the Church of England, or he would harry them out of the land or hang them. So the sparks of persecution spread, fanned on by the Protestant Reformation. It was a difficult time for those who chose to worship God as their conscience directed. Hunted, persecuted, and imprisoned, they could discern in the future no promise of better days, and many yielded to the conviction that for such as would serve God according to the dictates of their conscience, England was ceasing forever to be a habitable place. History of New England, Chapter 3, paragraph 43. And when God's hand seemed pointing them across the sea to a land where they might found for themselves a state and lead to their children the precious heritage of religious liberty, they went forward without shrinking in the path of providence. The Great Controversy, page 291. It was a rough and trying voyage, those 64 days crossing the Atlantic. The tired and ailing Mayflower Pilgrims, numbering 102, set foot on the shores of the New World November 9, 1620. Sinking to their knees, they thanked God for a safe journey and for a new home. Soon the good news spread throughout the Old World of a land where everyone might enjoy the fruit of their own labor and obey the convictions of their own conscience. Thousands flocked to the shores of the New World. By 1775, the struggle of the colonies for independence raged, and on the evening of July 4, 1776, the Declaration of Independence was ratified after a moving appeal by Patrick Henry. The revered document penned by Thomas Jefferson declared, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness." Oxford History of the American People, page 223. 13 years after the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution was ratified. The first 10 amendments to the Constitution are known as the Bill of Rights. The First Amendment begins, "Congress shall make no law respecting the establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof." This nation was established without the power of kingly authority and without a state church. Our forefathers were determined that America would enjoy the benefits of two great principles: civil liberty and religious freedom. Church and state were to be forever separated. America was destined to be a great land. The struggling, isolated colonies grew into a confederation of powerful states, and the world was amazed at the peace in their prosperity without a church with a pope and a state without a king. Well, you say, we have studied the prophecies concerning empires past and how history testifies to the accuracy of their fulfillment, but what about the United States? Doesn't God have anything to say about this great land in Bible prophecy? Indeed, He does. In fact, it would be surprising to discover that a land destined to become such a vibrant and dynamic nation, one with such significant developments in religious affairs, had been left out of Bible prophecy. And of course it wasn't. 14 centuries before Columbus discovered the New World, a Bible prophet named John foretold America's unique rise to power, the time she would come to power, its type of government, and its influence in world affairs. Now that is surprising, you say. Perhaps, but God has spoken to His prophets through the ages concerning the great nations of the world and the relationships they held in regard to the destiny of His people. In Revelation 13, John describes a beast power that is identical to the little horn power described by the prophet Daniel. And I stood upon the sand of the sea, and saw a beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon his horns 10 crowns, and upon his heads the name of blasphemy. Verse 1. John continues, And the beast which I saw was like unto a leopard, and his feet were as the feet of a bear, and his mouth as the mouth of a lion, and the dragon gave him his power, and his seat, and great authority. Revelation 13:2. You will remember that as we studied the prophecy of the woman in white and the dragon in Revelation 12, we discovered that the dragon was the devil working through the pagan Roman Empire. We found that this was the power that was to give his power, his seat, and great authority to the beast of Revelation 13. History records that Constantine, emperor of pagan Rome, donated his capital, the city of Rome, plus an army and a treasury to the bishop of Rome, thus fulfilling this prophecy. Verse 7 states, And it was given unto him to make war with the saints and to overcome them. John also states that this power would continue 42 months, or 1,260 years. This is the same time period as that of the little horn that Daniel saw. The beast of Revelation 13 and the little horn power of Daniel 7 both symbolize the papacy. Speaking of the 7-headed beast of Revelation, John writes, And I saw one of his heads as it were wounded to death, and his deadly wound was healed, and all the world wondered after the beast. Revelation 13:3. We have studied the first part of this prophecy and its fulfillment before. On the morning of February 15, 1798, Pope Pius VI was taken captive by the French general Berthier. The Pope died in exile the following year. The power of papal Rome was broken. One of its heads had received a deadly wound. For decades, the papacy had little or no influence in the religious or political affairs of the nations. But according to Bible prophecy, it would rise again to power. The wound would be healed. Has the wound been healed? Certainly, today there can be no doubt about the papacy's religious and political clout around the world. The healing process was greatly advanced with the signing of the Concordat between Mussolini's Italian government and the Vatican in 1929. This treaty gave the Pope sovereignty over the Vatican city-state, restoring his political status. Now notice the next part of John's vision. The aged prophet saw a most interesting sight. Another beast or nation rising to power at the same time that the papacy received its deadly wound. And I beheld another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had 2 horns like a lamb, and he spoke as a dragon. Revelation 13:11. There was something different about this nation. The other beasts rose out of the sea, or populated areas of the world. This nation came up out of the earth, or wilderness area. Think for a moment. What young, peace-loving nation was growing in power and prominence in a wilderness area of the world in 1798? At the same time, the papal power was wounded unto death. Only one nation can claim that prophetic distinction, the United States of America. In just 2 centuries, it has become one of the most powerful nations on earth. It is significant that this lamb-like beast has no crowns on its horns, as the other beasts preceding it. In other words, it would be a nation without a king, having a church without a pope. Please notice the identifying characteristics of this lamb-like beast of Revelation 13. The description of prophecy pinpoints the United States as this power that would rise out of the wilderness. Notice the identifying marks. Number 1, it would come out of the wilderness, not out of the populated areas of the world. It did just that. Number 2, it would rise to prominence just as the leopard-like beast of Revelation 13 was receiving its deadly wound. That was in 1798, just at the right time. Number 3, it would be a democratic world power, as it had no crowns which signify a kingly power. It is a republic leading the march for democracy. Number 4, it would become a world power that would lead the rest of the world to worship the beast and receive its mark. There can be no doubt that God was using symbolism to describe this great country of ours and to show the place this country would play in the closing events of this world's history. What a wonderful privilege to live in this country, in which the Statue of Liberty has long been a symbol of the freedoms to be enjoyed within the borders of this land. But this will not always be so. The rest of the story is not so pleasant. The time will come when this nation, while appearing to be gentle as a lamb, will speak like a dragon, for the Bible says, "He spoke as a dragon." Revelation 13:3. Obviously, sometime, somehow, a change will take place in the government of the United States. In fact, it is already taking place. Usually, nations speak through their legislative enactments or laws. And throughout history, whenever and wherever the dragon voice has been heard, there has been persecution. The prophecy continues with a most startling announcement. Speaking of America, the Bible says, "And he exercises all the power of the first beast before him, and causes the earth and them that dwell therein to worship the first beast, whose deadly wound was healed." Revelation 13:12. Unbelievable as it may seem, the persecuting character of the first beast or papal Rome is to be duplicated by the lamb-like beast turned dragon, or the United States. The prophecy states that this lamb-like beast will cause them that dwell on the earth to worship the first beast or papal Rome. But you say, that could never happen in America, the land of the free and the home of the brave. We have the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, and our Bill of Rights to protect us from infringement against our liberties. We have a guarantee of separation of church and state. Any infringement of our liberties would be directly contrary to the principles of our government. So it would. This could only happen if the principles of civil and religious liberty written into our Constitution were abandoned or simply ignored. But it is happening. Incredible, you say. So it seems, but the Bible clearly declares it will be so. Continuing the prophecy concerning the United States, we read, "And he doeth great wonders, so that he makes fire come down from heaven on the earth in the sight of men, and deceives them that dwell on the earth by the means of those miracles which he had power to do in the sight of the beast, saying to them that dwell on the earth, that they should make an image to the beast, which had the wound by a sword, and did live." Revelation 13:13-15. Wait a minute, you say. What is this image to the beast spoken of in that text? That's a good question. To make an image or likeness of something, we have to copy it. In other words, for our government to copy the aims and policies of papal Rome, it would have to tear down the wall of separation between church and state. Religious power would have to so control our government that she would make and enforce religious laws. For the Bible says, "He causes the earth and them which dwell therein to worship the first beast, whose deadly wound was healed." Revelation 13:12. This prophecy clearly indicates that the authority of this nation will be used in enforcing some religious observance, which shall be an act of homage to the papacy. Well, you ask, how would that ever be possible for the whole world to worship or pay homage to the papacy? Let's let the Bible and papal pronouncements answer that question. God gives a fearful warning in Revelation 14:9 and 10. "If any man worship the beast and his image, and receive his mark on his forehead or in his hand, the same shall drink of the wine of the wrath of God, which is poured out without mixture into the cup of his indignation." God also gave a message of hope to those who are faithful to him. Here is the patience of the saints. Here are they that keep the commandments of God and the faith of Jesus. Revelation 14:12. Since those who keep God's commandments are contrasted with those who worship the beast, it follows that the keeping of God's law on the one hand and its violation on the other will make the distinction between the worshipers of God and the worshipers of the beast. Speaking about the same power, the beast power, Paul states, "Who opposes and exalts himself above all that is called God, or that is worshipped, so that he as God sits in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God." Certainly, by changing the law of God, the papacy would be exalting itself above God. Has it attempted to do this? It freely admits it. The Catholic Encyclopedia, verse 4, page 153, has this to say: "The Church, after changing the day of rest from the Jewish Sabbath or seventh day of the week to the first, made the third commandment refer to Sunday as the day to be kept holy as the Lord's day." This claim isn't something new. The Catholic record over 70 years ago carried this interesting statement: "Sunday is our mark of authority. The Church is above the Bible, and this transference of Sabbath observance is proof of that fact." Catholic Record, September 1st, 1923. Here we find that the papacy claims that its mark of authority in religious matters is its ability to change the law of God, instituting Sunday as a day of worship, in direct violation of God's command to keep the seventh day as a holy day. Just as keeping of Sabbath is a sign of our worship and allegiance to God, observance of Sunday is a sign of giving homage or worship to the papacy. Notice their claim. The observance of Sunday by the Protestants is an homage they pay in spite of themselves to the authority of the Catholic Church. Plain Talk About the Protestantism of Today, page 213. Listen to this statement from the St. Catherine Catholic Church Sentinel, May 21, 1995. It said, "Perhaps the boldest thing, the most revolutionary change that the Church ever did happened in the first century. The holy day, the Sabbath, was changed from Saturday to Sunday, not from any directions noted in the Scriptures, but from the Church's sense of its own power. People who think that the Scriptures should be the sole authority should logically become Seventh-day Adventists and keep the Saturday holy." If, according to the symbols of Bible prophecy, the United States is to exercise all the power of papal Rome and cause the people of the world to worship the papacy and make an image to the beast, it need only exalt or legislate the observance of Sunday as a day of worship and cause the rest of the world to accept it. It will happen. Bible prophecy makes it clear. Speaking of the beast or papal Rome, the Bible states, "And all that dwell upon the earth shall worship him, whose names are not written in the book of life." Revelation 13:8. The worship of the beast, or keeping the day it claims as its mark, will not always be a matter of voluntary choice. Religious legislation will be enacted that will compel people by threats of boycott and finally the penalty of death to worship the beast. "And he had power to give life unto the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak and cause that as many as would not worship the image of the beast should be killed. And he causes all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand, or in their forehead, and that no man might buy or sell, save he that had the mark, or the name of the beast, or the number of his name. Revelation 13:15-17. The time is not far distant when everyone will be required to keep holy the first day of the week instead of the day commanded by God. Religious pressure is even now being exerted upon our politicians. Since 1980, Christian Voice has put out a comprehensive presidential biblical scorecard that rates every U.S. senator or representative on moral family votes. May-June Liberty, 1980. It designates which legislator votes correctly according to the Bible. They then urge the nation to put so-called Christians into public office so the nation can become officially a nation under God. In doing so, they blatantly contradict the U.S. Constitution, which clearly states, "But no religious test shall ever be required as a qualification to any office or public trust under the United States." Robert Grant, director of Christian Voice, a group reportedly intending to mold Christians and other morally right-thinking people into a potent political factor in American politics, says, "If Christians unite, we can do anything. We can pass any law or any amendment, and that's exactly what we intend to do." Liberty, May-June, 1980, page 4. Later, Norman Cousins wrote, "The moment religious forces seek to control government rather than influence it, they threaten the very society they seek to protect." Liberty, March-April, 1983, page 26. Since 1988, the papacy has been hosting, by UN invitation, an annual meeting with major world religions in Assisi, Italy, to discuss religious unification and political issues. The UN sees the Vatican as holding the leadership key to religious tolerance and unity to help bring world peace. Current Issues, page 1. The prophet John said that the whole world would wonder after the beast. Surely the deadly wound has been healed. Even the scar is disappearing. The rift between the Protestants and Catholics is shrinking. Hatchets are being buried at such a pace that many theologians say that unity is on its way to reality. By 1977, John Stott, advisor to the World Council of Churches, said, "The visible unity of all professing Christians should be our goal. And the evangelicals should join others in the Church of England in working toward full communion with the Catholic Church." Michael Semelin, All Roads Lead to Rome. It is interesting to notice that one religious writer, E.G. White, commenting on these prophecies over 100 years ago, confidently stated, "The Protestants of the United States will be foremost in stretching their hands across the gulf to grasp the hand of spiritualism. They will reach over the abyss to clasp hands with the Roman power, and under the influence of this threefold union, this country will follow in the steps of Rome in trampling on the rights of conscience." The Great Controversy, page 588. Even the United States government has been willing to court the interests and favors of the Vatican. Remember that on January 10, 1984, while seemingly circumventing the democratic process, the White House and the Holy See both announced that they had established diplomatic relations. William A. Wilson, who had been serving as the President's personal envoy to the Holy See at the Vatican, had been nominated by the White House as the United States ambassador to the Holy See. How can this action harmonize with a U.S. Supreme Court decision that stated that neither a state nor the federal government can pass laws which aid one religion, aid all religions, or prefer one religion over another? Everson v. Board of Education, 1947. This radical change in a long-standing national policy was accomplished almost without a whimper of dissent in either house. How was it that the First Amendment to the United States Constitution was apparently ignored, and the violation of the American principle of equality of all religions aroused no debate in either house? Not one religious denomination supported the legislation. Opposition was formidable from conservative and religious groups, but this massive opposition was ignored by the administration and the media. Are you beginning to see how easily our personal freedoms could disappear overnight? But President Reagan's action comes as little surprise to the student of Bible prophecy, for this candid prediction is made concerning the United States. And he exercises all the power of the first beast, papal Rome, before him, and causes the earth and them which dwell therein to worship the first beast, whose deadly wound was healed. Revelation 13:12. Amazing? Indeed. This text reveals that the United States will lead all other nations into paying homage to the papacy by ultimately honoring her day of worship. It's very difficult to believe that such a radical departure from our government's principles of religious freedom would come about. But the Bible states that it will, and it is. Many people will be deceived into believing that God is in the movement to unite all religions and worship the beast and his day of worship. They will believe that God is supporting the religious political alliances because of all the miracles being performed, and the lamb-like beast deceives them that dwell on the earth by the means of those miracles which he had power to do. Revelation 13:14. The only people not deceived by the miracles will be those who refuse to worship the beast. Their names are written in the book of life, but they will be threatened and finally placed under a death decree, for as many as would not worship the image of the beast should be killed. Revelation 13:15. And that decree will be made by the lamb-like beast, speaking as a dragon. As one writer says, when the leading churches of the United States, uniting upon such points of doctrine as are held by them in common, shall influence the state to enforce their decrees and to sustain their institutions, then Protestant America will have formed an image to the Roman hierarchy, and the infliction of civil penalties upon dissenters will inevitably result. The Great Controversy, page 445. Here we see the issue to which the whole world is being brought. According to Bible prophecy, the United States will be the primary moving force, the agent for enacting legislation to cause everyone to worship the beast. The world will unite in a crusade against those who refuse to comply with their repressive religious regulations. Civil penalties will be enforced, and finally those refusing to worship the beast will be declared deserving of death. But God's warning is clear. If any man worship the beast and his image, and receives his mark in his forehead or in his hand, the same shall drink of the wine of the wrath of God, which is poured out without mixture into the cup of his indignation. Revelation 14:9 and 10. Uniting with this message of God's final warning to the inhabitants of the earth is heard in God's loving call. Come out of her, my people, that you be not partakers of her sins, that you receive not of her plagues. Revelation 18:4. Many conscientious people have been confused. They have followed the beast unknowingly. As they hear God's call to come out of Babylon, the false systems of worship, they step out and join the ranks of those who refuse to worship the beast or to receive the plagues. John saw in vision the triumphal celebration given in heaven for those who had been victorious over the beast and his image. And I saw as it were a sea of glass mingled with fire, and them that had gotten the victory over the beast and over his image and over his mark and over the number of his name stand on the sea of glass, having the harps of God. And they sing the song of Moses and the song of the Lamb, saying, Great and marvelous are your works, Lord God Almighty. Just and true are your ways, thou King of saints. Revelation 15:2 and 3. Friend, don't you want to be a part of that great celebration in heaven? Jesus says, Behold, I come quickly. Are you ready for the glory of the coming of our Lord? He's coming soon. Let's meet on that day. There was a man by the name of Milton Schustic who lived in Central Europe in a country where freedom is not always easy to attain. This is his story. During the years of Soviet domination, when there was great religious oppression, he experienced the following trial. When the communists took over his country, he wanted to be free to worship on the Sabbath. He wanted to be free to read his Bible. He wanted to continue his work as a minister. But the communists had other ideas. They were determined to turn all ministers into laborers. Milton knew that they wanted to send him as far away from his congregation as possible, far away to the coal mines. But he got an idea. He figured out a way that he might be able to stay close to his pastoral work in the city of Prague. There was one job in the city that nobody wanted. Nobody wanted to climb into those narrow, filthy culverts and clean them hundreds of feet under the city. Milton decided to go see the communist officials about that job. But first, he got down on his knees and prayed. "Jesus," he said, "I want to worship you every Sabbath. Please help me to keep your law and to be honest and faithful to you." Milton was ushered in to see the local official. Milton said to her, "I understand you want to ship me to the mines to work. Let me tell you something. My grandfather worked in the mines, and my father worked in the mines, and I'm willing to work in whatever mine you send me. But I have a suggestion. You need someone to do the worst job you have. I know about it. It's climbing down into those sewers, and I am willing to do it. Why don't you assign me to clean the sewer pipes of Prague? I'll be happy to do it, because they would give me the privilege of worshiping my God here." Something touched that communist official's heart. She looked at him and said, "Pastor, I'm not a godly woman. I'm just trying to fulfill work assignments, but I'll let you worship your God. Go clean the sewer pipes." You should have seen the look on Milton's face as he was telling the story. He admitted that it was a very tough job, very dark, very stressful, but every day was worth it. He said, "I could worship my God in loyalty, in truth." Yes, God has His faithful people in every age. They are shining lights in a dark place. And I'd like you to take your stand among those faithful people. Don't worry about the obstacles you may face. Don't worry about the challenges your commitment may bring. Milton Shustik was willing to serve God at any cost, and God took care of him. And He will take care of you, too. Wouldn't you like to respond to the angel's call to come out of her, my people? Don't you right now want to become a part of God's church, who keep the commandments of God and the faith of Jesus?
Glory of the coming of the Lord. He is trampling out the vintage where the grapes of wrath are stored. He hath loosed the faithful lightning of His terrible swift sword. His truth is marching on. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. His truth is marching on. I have read a fiery gospel writ in burnished rows of steel. As ye deal with my contemners, so with you my grace shall deal. Let The hero born of woman crushed the serpent with his heel.